Again, if this is your first time here, I'm Katie, the General Manager of ADAC. We still have some people trickling in, so we'll let them do that while we go ahead and get the program started. Thank you for being here for our last presentation of the day, which is Digital Day. We host two business series every year, Digital Day and Get Down to Business. And Digital Day is always in the spring, and it focuses on more technology, social media, and anything in the digital landscape. So if you've been here all day, I hope you've had a great day and are walking away with some great tips. And if this is your first presentation, just letting you know we left notebooks in the chairs and there's some in the back. So if you want to write any notes down, you have the capability of doing that. And then we will have all of these presentations available on our YouTube channel. Give us a little while to get those edited and put on our YouTube channel, and then we'll send out an email letting you all know that you can go there and see all of the presentations from today. Of course, we have our social media on this event guide here. And most importantly, I want to thank our sponsors for this final presentation, that's Simply Wired, who will be opening a new showroom on the 4th floor. We are so excited about that. So be on the lookout and go in and see his showroom very, very soon. And then, of course, R. Hughes is our other sponsor for today. So thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Russell.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Russel Feldman. I'm the owner of Simply Wired Pro. We are a company that specializes in lighting control, design, and automation. I've been in the business since 1995. With all those years of experience, I've seen technology come and go over the years, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of that experience here with you today. Betsy?
My name is Betsy Berry. I'm an interior designer based in Charleston. I have projects nationally and internationally. And I am the voice of the designer in this lighting discussion.
I'm Nick Grinder. I think I'm the bridge. So I'm in charge of sales for Apparatus. We're a 10-year-old company based in New York that makes lighting and decorative objects and furniture. Lighting available at R. Hughes here in Atlanta. And I work with our internal design team to come up with new collections, work with a lot of interior designers, and learn a lot from lighting professionals about technology and a very shifting sands of technology in the lighting world right now.
Awesome. And I think when we met earlier, I think we wanted to reach out to the audience a little bit and see who our audience was. We don't want to bore you with too many technical details. So how many designers do we have in the audience? Great. And specifiers? Anyone? Okay. Awesome. Well, I think what we're going to start with is incandescent versus LED and how it's evolved. So, Nick, in your opinion, what would you say has been the most significant difference between incandescent and LED as far as decorative fixtures?
Sure. I mean, we started 10 years ago, and incandescent was our world. It's what we worked with. We were a really small team, very limited resources. So it was about the bulbs we could find that we liked. And I think what the human being likes to get really like Cro-Magnon is flame. And so when you look at illumination, you're looking at something when the flame is bright, it's whiter. When it goes down, it gets warmer. It flickers beautifully, and it makes everybody look really nice. And incandescent is sort of the technological equivalent of that we were used to. So our first response was LED, was fear, because everything that we knew looked like a hospital waiting room. It wasn't flattering. It didn't dim well. And I think the sort of tech side of that knew that. And so technology finally caught up with human expectations. And then when we were really able to get into the nitty-gritty of what LED was capable of, that fear turned into freedom. Not to make it too like, wow, but it means that you can put sources of illumination in spaces that wouldn't allow it before. Tiny. You can make pinpoints that really kind of expand. You can dim to different sort of levels to create different moods and to illuminate a space. So the real difference was, I mean, an education was necessary, especially to design fixtures around it, and then to help designers sort of help educate their clients. You probably still have clients that still, I only went incandescent because it's what they know. But we need to relearn because there's a lot more out there. And it's helped us create new collections that wouldn't be possible without LED.
I feel like it's hard to find incandescent. Like when we're specifying bulbs, or like when we do our lighting schedules, we have our bulb schedules as well. And there are clients that, ask for that. And I feel like it's coming to the point now where it's difficult to find. And I think it's the same for a designer. I think I was scared of it in the beginning because I didn't understand it. And I thought the lighting was harsh and horrible. Like, nobody wants the daylight bulb, You want the evening glow.
Don't take that client.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you want that evening glow. And now all of that is possible with LED. And I just kind of trust the industry at this point. Like, I read the box, I read the glow. We test them prior to install, but I feel like there's so many options now that it's something that we can understand.
So you'd say this has impacted your approach overall to lighting?
Yes and no. I think, again, like I would say maybe 10 years ago, if something was LED, I was hesitant. And now it's just something that's just a part of the world, so I trust it. Like, I trust the designers and the lighting designers that if I'm buying this fixture, their taste level is going to be similar, and we're going to want that color of light.
Okay. So the next segment that I want to talk about is LED specifications. So this is where Nick is supposed to grab the hook and pull me off if I go too deep or it's getting a little bit out of control. So with all of today's LEDs, we all know that specifying light can get a little bit complicated. So there are a lot of different things to be considered. So how many of you out there know about lumens? Does everyone know what lumens are? Yes, no, show of hands, anyone? Yeah, it's very low. So a candela, lumen is basically based on the old candela. So way back when, 1800 BC, there's a candela of light. So if you had one candle, that's one candela. So one lumen of light is basically one candela. So if you have a light that's going to give you 850 lumens, so that's a pretty standard downlight these days, that's the equivalent of having 850 candles in a space. So that's a good way to
And
think
here's where I'm
about
going to cut you off,
didn't-
because that's a fire hazard.
Yeah.
But we're used to incandescent bulbs. So everybody's saying, I need a 100-watt bulb in here.
Yeah.
So if you find something that's 1,000 lumens, that's going to be a 100-watt bulb. So just take a zero, move the decimal over. It's
100%.
round, it's about, but it's going to give you enough confidence to know like that's how much light you're going to get.
Yeah.
And don't look at the wattage anymore, because you're going to see something that says it's only 6 watts, but if it's LED, that could be the equivalent of a 100-watt bulb.
Yeah.
So you're saving energy costs, which are going up and up and up, and that bulb's going to last for 10 years compared to 10 months. So lumens, just take off, move the decimal one over, and then that's about the wattage of an incandescent equivalent. And that's, you could get a lot more technical, but I think for general, like, that gives you an idea, because we all know what a 100-watt bulb is. And don't forget, everything should be dimmable. There's still non-dimmable LEDs out there. Boycott them.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, 100%. And then along with that 6 watts, we all know that's not a set amount. So, use those numbers as guidelines. So it's all about efficiencies with LEDs, right?
Right.
So,
The wattage is just
the wattage is just a number. So, so then you have the CRI. Has everyone heard the term CRI? So CRI is the quality of the light. So it's measured on an R scale. So again, trying not to get too technical with how many R values there are. But basically, there's a score from 1 to 100, 1 being the lowest and 100 being the highest. So for general purposes, you're going to want to keep that R scale at 90 plus. I think we all on this panel would agree with that. So we have a little demo here. So we have this bulb here. This is a lower CRI up against a picture. So you can see how that image looks. That's all the way up. Of course, this is the picture you're going to want in your house, right? But you have an idea of what that image looks like. It gives you some color. It definitely gives you light on the image. If I turn that off, and then I give you a high CRI, you can definitely see a difference in the image. You have a clearer light, higher vibrancy, 100% difference between image A and image B. And that's just in the CRI, the difference in the CRI value.
I think what this all translates to, again, it goes back to just the human experience. And so all of this is measured against something in the natural world. So CRI is measured against a cloudless day near the equator and sunlight. So when you see a red apple on a cloudless day, that red is what's being measured. So if you've got something that has a CRI of 70, I don't know if you've ever gone into a fitting room and tried on like these pants, and these brown pants are great. Then you go outside and somebody says, I love your red pants. And it's because the CRI in that fitting room was low. I know, Betsy, you've got, there it is, that red lacquered room. If that CRI, the lighting in that room was all 70, that room would look muddy. So we're all spending this time picking these great colors. It's always great to pick them in sunlight because that's going to be the truest, what the human eye sees. And then in an internal environment, if you can be CRI, I like to say 85 and up. I think for architectural lighting, 90 and up is definitely where you want to be because it doesn't have to be decorative. Those colors are going to read true, and Betsy's projects are going to reveal themselves for the colors that she picked out.
I didn't even know that.
You're natural.
That's so interesting. I honestly didn't even know that. It's like I work with the lighting designers and they would talk about CRI. I'm like, huh,
Right.
look at that.
Yeah, it's just how close it's going to register to the human eye compared to what the sun would reveal it to be.
Interesting, okay.
Why would you select a lower CRI?
It's not about selecting. I think something that's going to bring lower CRI are a couple things. So one is going to be expense, like actually incandescent. Some of them have a pretty low CRI. Certain frosted bulbs and finishes are going to lower the CRI. Certain shades will lower the CRI of a delivered lumen. So it's not really usually selecting it. But I also think that and this is where we can talk about the difference between architectural lighting, which really needs to function, and decorative lighting, which Apparatus makes, which needs to be pretty, and definitely needs to function. If you've got architectural lighting that's all 90 and a decorative pendant that is 80,
You're not worried about it so much in the
Correct.
decorative because that's creating the glow, but in the architectural, you want the.
it's
Correct.
reflecting on the surfaces that need to be correctly.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Scale for CRI, like 70 to 100,
The CRI scale starts at 1. It goes 1 to 100 in architectural lighting. I mean, I really haven't seen any architectural fixtures much lower than 79 these days, but you'll start seeing them appear around 85, and they'll appear on the market at 85, like Nick said, because they're trying to hit a price point. So they're trying to get you a fixture. You know, when you're talking about architectural fixtures, they're trying to get you a price point. You know, for argument's sake, let's say in the $100 range on an architectural fixture, and that client's going to try to be motivated to hit a budget where they're trying to do a $100 downlight, and they're like, well, I don't want to spend the money, and then you're going to come in the design world, and you're going to pick all these great finishes, and then they're going to go in, and to Nick's point, you're going to come in later, and you're just going to be frustrated, and you're going to be like, well, I promise you they didn't look like this.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, but when the sun's out and the windows are open, it looks great in this room, but the other rooms, I don't understand it. And it's going to be the CRI that's throwing it off. So, any other questions on that? And then the CCT. So CCT is the correlated color temperature, so fancy name. So basically, there's a lot of colors out there, right? So there are all the colors in the rainbow. And there is this curve that's called the black body curve. So it has a number scale on it. And most of you know that the main numbers that you guys know are 2700 Kelvin and 3000 Kelvin and 5000 Kelvin, right? So you warm, dim, and cool, and daylight, I think is what everyone is referencing now. So 3000 Kelvin is what that light is putting out now. Daylight would be, or warm dim is more in there. It's more of a 2700 Kelvin. So these are all on the white spectrum. So you'll find that your warmer colors are closer to an incandescent bulb. So they're a yellower in color. And then your cooler colors are whiter or bluer, the cooler you get or the higher you get, and they're closer to daylight. which is closer to that 5,000 Kelvin. So you can get into your circadian lighting. So some people get automated systems to run a circadian rhythm where in the evening or at night, you're running about 2200 Kelvin, so it's a warm glow. And then as the daylight comes up, the light starts to get cooler and cooler and then starts matching the daylight outside so that your light outside matches your light inside. And that makes your body feel more alive and awake and energized. And every room in the house is the same lighting as it is outside. And then as the sun starts setting, the light will start warming and settling down. And then that helps your body relax and calm down and then start winding down for the day. So you would need an automation system to run that pattern, but that is an option. The other option that's out there for that type of lighting is you have these cool or warm dims that run, and those will typically give you a 3,000 Kelvin top and a 2,200 Kelvin bottom, and they'll warm down. The only thing to be careful with those is if you're trying to do energy efficiency and you plan on running your light at 75% or 60%, you have to be careful, because if you have a contemporary house and you want the majority of the time at 3,000 Kelvin and you're running 60%, you're going to have a 2,700 Kelvin the majority of the time. So just keep that in mind. And then that runs me into dimming, where we have different types of dimmers that come in.
This is the sexy part.
And that's where, Nick and I had a little conversation over at RQ's. So we have these different dimmers and different things that go on with dimming. So I think, I know a lot of you are not techie, but some of you may run into the problem. You get this cool bulb and you only have one of them, and you try to use a dimmer, and you have a problem because it's not enough wattage, right?
Right.
So,
I think the thing about LED is it's so energy efficient, and it uses such a small amount of power that if you've got a dimmer that's used to dimming on and off an incandescent bulb, it's not going to be sensitive enough to correctly power an LED. But anything that's currently on the market is going to have an LED compatible dimmer. So I mean, on Amazon you could look at, I feel like Steven and I have texted about so many dimmers, and like Adiva, Lutron, like don't get this one, get this one,
Yeah.
and it's going to work with any fixture.
I think it's
Orbs and lumens.
I think it's coming up. Like
Yeah.
that is something that we are dealing with in our office now.
Yeah.
We've put in certain dimmers or certain things that look a certain way because I wanted it to look that way. And then we're getting calls from the electricians and the clients, and they're saying, I don't understand. The dimmer is going from this to this, essentially from A to C rather than that middle ground.
Right. Well, and then the question to ask if you ever want to confirm compatibility, or if you have something that you know isn't operating correctly and you don't know why, is what is the dimmer's minimum and maximum load capacity? Basically what that means is what's the maximum that dimmer can provide to the 1 or the 8 fixtures that are on that dimmer, and then what's the minimum? Because if you've got 5 fixtures that are only really 2 watts each, so you're using 10 watts of power and your minimum load capacity for that dimmer is 40 watts, you're going to dim it down and those lights are never going to go down until they turn off. But that dimmer has a cousin that has a minimum load capacity of 2 watts.
Yeah.
And that cousin is going to perform the way it's supposed to perform.
I've recently found the cousin.
I've learned the hard way too.
Yeah.
yeah. And then there are other, when we get to drivers, which I believe is coming up a little bit later, we'll get into the other type of things like 0 to 10 and eco and things like that. So we'll shelf that until we get to drivers. And then, Betsy, I wanted you to kind of let them know how, and I think you've kind of touched on it, as a designer, how you've handled some of those challenges from the design world, and hey, this fixture I spec'd is maybe not compatible with the dimmer that's there, or
I think a huge part of our jobs as designers is problem solving. And that is happening all the time. There's things I've Googled that I never thought I'd ever Google before. And it's like, I'm going down the rabbit hole to solve these issues that I'm not necessarily educated in, but it's my job to figure it out and talk to people that are educated in those ways. And I think, I think we're very, like what you said, I'm across the board, some electricians from day one really don't like me because I'm like, everything's going to be on a dimmer. So they immediately are like, you're a pain. And I'm like, I'm sorry. But for the livability for the client and the way we want this house to live, that is what is expected in all of these rooms. So right there, you're adding these not technical, but you're adding more labor essentially, and the whole idea of how many fixtures are the rooms, what are the bulbs, are these, are the switches going to work? And then when they don't, it's what I do is I try to figure it out, and I call people that I know that are educated, and just say, teach me, help me. I'm always trying to learn for the next project, whether if it's the roof line or anything. I'm like, why didn't this work? Explain it to me. So now I understand going forward what that should be, and that's how I found the cousin of the new switching, because I'm like, oh, this does exist. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. So Nick, drivers. So, so when we were downstairs, we had a brief discussion about 0 to 10 and how it's making its way into decorative fixtures. And so I know Jake's here from my team, and there's a few faces I see out there that I know. So it's really becoming more and more popular that a 0 to 10 fixture will pop up on a job site. So for us, when we wire a house, we know decorative fixtures going in, we pull a 5-wire to it. But not all electricians and not all companies do that. So a designer will spec a fixture, a decorative fixture, not knowing what wiring's there, and that fixture might be 0 to 10. How are you guys, are you seeing more of that? How do you handle that? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, right now, none of our fixtures come out of the box compatible with 0 to 10 dimming. So you'd need to install a step-down converter to sort of translate that dimming protocol to work with the fixture. We're changing it with some of our new fixtures because we are being asked more and more about 0 to 10 dimming, which I don't know if everybody knows. What that means is basically we're used to a dimmer that's just going to cut the line voltage so that you can give full power, a little bit less to dim a bulb. So 0 to 10 is actually, it has an additional set of wires that's running through from the dimmer or from your control panel all the way to the fixtures in addition to the power. And so those wires are the ones that control the dimming, not just the power. So it means that you need to be wired differently in order for that to be compatible. And then you need to have a driver that translates sort of the control from the 0 to 10 and the power that's actually being supplied to the fixture. All of which is to say that anything's possible, and sometimes you need to run an additional set of wire, and sometimes you just need to have an additional box that usually your dimming specialist is going to be able to supply that'll sit in a J-box or in a closet behind a fixture, and you can run those wires to it. What we're doing because again, it's a little bit of the Wild West still as far as dimming protocols, because you've got Triac, you've got Dali, which is bigger in Europe, you've got 0 to 10, which all have slightly different requirements. We've got our new fixtures that we're launching are going to be compatible out of the box with all three because they're going to have a little box in the canopy that has separate portals. So you can put your power in one, you can put 0 to 10 if you have it in another, you can put Triac in a third if you have that. So I think you're going to see more and more fixtures at the marketplace that have sort of multiple ways of connecting them, and things that are going to be as clear as they can be in the installation instructions. And it's just a matter of how you attach, but they're going to be compatible across 3 different dimming protocols. So I just got really boring. So I'm trying to figure out how to spin that, all of which is to say that everything's going to, you can make almost, in my experience, any fixture work with any system. It's just a matter of what additional thing you might need to add in. And it's a combination of talking to the manufacturer to make sure you really understand how that fixture works, and then talking to your dimming specialist or lighting engineer so that they can explain how the system works, and then where's the translation to make sure that they marry.
Yeah.
I did not know. Was that something?
I think
that's fine.
So as rare as it is for me to try to bring it back to English. So I think what you need to understand is LEDs, so we plug things into the wall, and lights typically work on that same voltage. LEDs work typically on 12 and 24 volt electricity, which is a step down from that voltage. So in order to step it down, you need a driver, and that's what a driver is. So that basic understanding is that if you're putting in an LED, you need something to step it down, and you need to be able to dim through that driver.
And just to take some of the fear away, if you go to Home Depot and you buy an LED light bulb,
Yeah.
the driver's
in
in
there.
That's
It's
what I
in
was
It's in
saying.
the light bulb.
It's in the light bulb.
I was just about to say that. That doesn't have to do with the
Yeah,
light
so
bulb.
there-
It needs to exist.
Yeah.
You don't need to find it.
Because the only
we need to
thing,
find
So
it.
the only
sometimes
thing
it's
I know about the driver, like that I know that a driver was needed, is like if we had like exposed beams in an old house up on the top floor, and we'll run LED, like so it glows.
The architectural lighting.
Yeah,
Architect.
and then that's where like the driver is, because
Right.
that's not the bulb, that's the actual LED, right?
So usually, correct. So usually in decorative fixtures, the driver is in the fixture
in it,
already.
right.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
when you're specifying higher end decorative fixtures, they usually want you to specify the driver type. I mean, I don't know if Apparatus.
We always include a
requires that,
driver.
or-
Yeah, it's always included. So driver, it's really a translator. So it translates the 120 volt power to whatever power the LED that's in the light fixture needs. So it's this translation. Sometimes it's a tiny chip that's on an LED board,
Yeah.
fully integrated. Sometimes it's in a screw-in light bulb. And sometimes it's a little box that's in the canopy or that's included with the bulb that you put into the J box, and it translates before it gets to the fixture. I think a lot of people get hung up on what's the driver type, and that actually matters a lot less than what dimming protocols is the driver and fixture compatible with. And if you ask that question, I think you'll get the information that you need to make sure that you're creating a system that's going to be able to control the fixture.
Yeah. So in an effort to move us along, I think we're trailing a little.
Okay.
So I'm going to move through architectural lighting. Some of the key points I wanted to cover are, although architectural lighting has come a long way and we've got smaller openings and we now have trimless and trimmed and adjustable, some of the other ways that we can get architectural lighting worked into a space, we have
Will you define architectural lighting? Like, what do you mean by that?
The non-pretty.
the non-decorative lighting.
The one
So I was about to go.
in the ceiling or built into
Yeah,
the
so I was going to go
structure.
into examples. So some examples are we can have lighting in the walls, so stair tread lighting. We can have grazing or washing of walls. We can have banister lighting, so lighting in banisters is
It's
a good
part-
example.
It's like built into the home.
Correct. Trays,
Yep.
can lights.
Yep.
You can have linear lighting either in the walls and the ceiling.
In millwork, you know, all that pretty glow when you go into like the hotel room and the
Correct.
whole thing glows at you like that.
Correct.
The thing that I always remind myself and people, because I'm really vain, is that sometimes the non-pretty architectural lighting is what makes everybody else pretty.
That's true.
Because you put one light bulb above my head and I'm gonna turn into like a lightning rod. So I need some more light to fill in the holes.
glow.
So the glow. So it's the architectural lighting that makes a room that you wanna be in and then helps you appreciate the decorative lighting that's gonna provide.
You want it to go away. You want it to go away,
Yeah.
and you want the room to glow. And so, in specifying that, you know, I think for me, as a designer that's driven by aesthetic, I think we would all agree. It's like, I want it to be trimless. I want it to be plastered up. You know, I want it to be small. And again, the electrician's like, you're such a pain. And I'm like, but it's going to be really pretty in the end. And all of the, I feel like that has come a long way in the past 10 years. Like now, I see that all the time when I'm traveling or whatever. Like you can see how small it is. You can see that the plaster, there's no trim. And it really just looks like a part of the ceiling, which I think is so much better than it was like 10 years ago.
I agree. Are there any other questions on general concepts of architectural lighting,
The functional lighting,
the functional lighting?
yeah.
So how about decorative lighting, Nick? So So let's start with Apparatus and their approach and philosophy to decorative lighting.
I mean, for us, it starts with the really non-techy stuff, which is material. I mean, we work with brass and horsehair and porcelain and all of these materials that hopefully make you want to get closer and touch. And then, of course, they also give illumination. So I think the thing that's been really nice about LED and expanding into other types of technology to create that illumination is, just like with the recessed lights, we need less and less space within a fixture to create the illumination, which means we've got more room to create something beautiful around it. Also, with less heat, we can create things that are safe and that we wouldn't have been as easily able to do before. We've got new collections that have satin and suede and upholstered leather sort of hoops and harnesses that hold a fixture together that is really made much more possible because of LED low temperature fixtures. Also, you can kind of put the lighting inside a fixture that's less accessible, and it's able to be, because you're not going to have to replace the bulb every 2 years like you do with incandescent. It's going to be every 15 or 20, and you need to take it down and take it apart, but it's 15 or 20 years, so that feels like a reasonable matter of upkeep. So it's really freed us to really start from scratch as far as what decorative lighting can be, from sconces that can have very, very low profiles, and then to really shine more powerful pieces of light through porcelain, through smoke-tinted glass, and play around with the materials that weren't necessarily accessible to us a decade ago, because you still had to have room for a light bulb, and now you don't. So that's been the real freeing thing. And then I will say there's still some fixtures where I appreciate them because it does have a screw-in light bulb, and it's LED, but it means that if you are specifying one of those fixtures and it's shaded, it's within a glass dome, and you want a brighter fixture or you want something with a different color temperature,
Then you can control it.
and you can control it. You can literally just replace it with any lamp-based light bulb that you like the light of. I've got more and more people that are getting the smart bulbs that you can control from an app, which is interesting. So it's nice that we've got, not all, but some of our collections compatible with that as well. So it's creating a little freedom for the designers and people who are using it. Certainly from us, from an original product design and development phase, we can work with smaller spaces to create bigger impact.
So Betsy, in trying to bring all this together, how would you, or what advice do you have for everyone in trying to tie in architectural lighting and decorative lighting into a single space?
One of the first things we do with a furniture plan, once we have the spatial layouts of the rooms, once we really nail down how we want that to, how it's going to feel and how it's going to be lived in, is doing a lighting plan, because that lighting plan is so critical. It's a huge part of the home, and if that's off, just like anything else, it's going to feel very strange in living there every day in the operation of the home. So, for example, like a bathroom is a really unique position, especially for a woman's vanity. It's, does the light go here? Does it go over top? Does it go in front? Does it go behind? We still want decorative sconces. We want things that are, I always refer to the lighting like jewelry. Like, it's the pieces that, I compare design a lot to getting dressed, and I think the upholstery in your things are your everyday, and then you have these beautiful, the jewelry is the lighting. It's what people see when they walk in the room. It glitters, it glows. And so you want that in a bathroom per se, but you also need the architectural lighting, because you need that to be able for someone to sit down in their vanity and put on their makeup at, 7 o'clock at night when it's dark, but also not blind them or have shadows. So it can become very technical. So we lay out the architectural lighting first, of just the function and how that's going to be used, and then we pull in the decorative where we really want people to see these things and create the glow, which is much more driven by design rather than the function. It adds to it, of course, but again, it's there to be pretty. And the lighting, it's the fun part, That's what I always say about decorating in general. Like, once you get through all the plans, you get through all the lighting, the architecture, and the base molding, and the trim, and then it's the fun part. Now we get to pick fabrics, we get to pick lighting, we get to really decorate it And so I think using that freedom and trusting your gut in those selections is the most critical, with also working with a lighting designer or lighting planner to confirm the architectural lighting. And if you do those two things, then I think the home will function really well.
I appreciate it. So now I'd like to open up the question and answer to you guys and see if you have any input for us.
Okay, and I just want to preface, I do want to use the microphone because we're recording today, so I want to make sure that the questions can be heard.
Thanks. So I sell lighting, and I feel like sometimes the exact same light can go to one project and to a different project, and the missing link is the installer, the electrician. How do you deal with a contractor that, like, one person seems to get it up and the damn thing works perfectly, and then the other one's like, I don't know what this is. They sent me a defective light, and it's the same thing.
Yes.
So how do you deal in those situations? Mostly you, because Betsy's calling me, not Nick.
I'm looking at him because I deal with the same thing, right? Same with plumbing. It's like one person can install this fixture and fitting, it works great, and this other person can't. And like what I said, I always try to go back, like I would go to Apparatus and say, I'm always, again, trying to problem solve. Why? What are the questions I am supposed to be asking? Like about the dimming, like, is that something I should be asking now? Because I don't know that. Like, I know these things I've learned along the way. We're very detailed in our schedules, like in our lighting schedules, but we run into that again. And so for me, when I do run into it, which I have, I go back to the manufacturer and I try to get as much information and specific as possible, even though I don't know what any of it means. I'm just handing it to the electrician, and I like to review it prior to install. I like to sit down with the electrician and the contractor and literally go over these technical things that, again, I don't necessarily understand, but I know need to be talked about. Yeah. So that day when it's happening, they're not calling me and freaking out because it doesn't work.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen it all. I mean, you've been with me and seen it all a lot too in installs. And over the years, we're constantly developing and refining a list of troubleshooting questions and guide. So I think for things that have integrated LED specifically, and if you're not getting dimming that feels like it's correct from a wall dimmer, it's always what's the minimum and maximum load capacity of the dimmer that you've installed, and does that kind of match up with the what you've installed to that dimmer? With our screw-in bulbs, it's really lame, but it's like, could you screw it in a little tighter? And those bulbs, because LEDs are so much more sensitive, incandescent, you could have an incandescent bulb, and that base could be almost screwed in tight, but not quite, and it's still gonna light. An LED bulb, even if it's just that screw-in bulb, needs to have a tighter connection. And there's actually in the socket, there's a bottom tab and a side tab, and they both need to connect to that metal socket in order to create a circuit. So the more you tighten and loosen, you're pushing down those tabs. And so our QC, before we ship anything out, is prying those. We tested to make sure the fixture works. We tested the bulbs, and then we pull those tabs so that they're as proud as they should be before we pack and ship a fixture. Doesn't say it doesn't still happen where somehow they get pushed in. So everything has a simple answer. It's just a matter of asking the right question. So as a manufacturer, I've worked really hard to make sure that troubleshooting guide goes through the protocol of questions. And then if none of that resolves, then I'm there to make it right. And sometimes there is a faulty component, that sometimes something literally just breaks in shipment or during install. And then there's a solution to everything. But I think getting to the solution, this easiest and simplest, which is usually right, is going through just the right protocol of questions and investigations.
Mm-hmm.
And then our feedback from Simply Wired would be we build relationships. So there are some designers in this room we have relationships with. So we work with them on several projects. We have a very deep knowledge on drivers and the installation of various products. We are not too proud to help another company out for the designers and the other electrical companies that we work with, and we do that pro bono because we know they give us work. So because we have that relationship with those companies, they just call us when they have a problem in the field, and then we call those contractors that are in the field, and we help them through those situations.
Don't give anybody your cell phone number today.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, okay. I'm going to get to you. I can run it.
Hi. Okay, so I hate daylight bulbs, as many designers do. And so, you mentioned how it can help with circadian rhythms, which I thought, okay, that's an awesome explanation for clients. Is there any other, do you guys know a good daylight bulb? And is there any other explanation, not even to turn clients away, but say, look, they are used for this, okay? I'm all about the glow. But I'm like, they make them, so they got to be used for something, but what? Exactly.
From my experience, it's really the transition from hospitality to retail to restaurant. I've done restaurant designs and I've done retail design. That is the only instance that I've changed the color of the light. That's the only reason I knew what lumens were, because we had to measure them under certain food and beverage stations, to get passed by code. And so in those particular circumstances are the only reason I would use them. But in a residential setting, it's very much more client preference and the way they live.
And that's what I was thinking. I was like, I'm thinking that they're probably, spec for commercial projects, and I'm like residential just.
Like retail stores, if you think about when you're shopping for clothes, when you're in that, when you're trying on the clothes and you're in the changing room, it's very bright. Right. The light is cool.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh, what do I look like this? And then you go outside and you're like, oh, it's all better, And so that's because they're wanting to show certain color and things like that.
Yeah, if it's just 5,000 Kelvin, I would say it's just residential.
No.
I mean, just commercial.
Yeah, no home deserves 5,000.
Yeah.
So, and I will tell you that, so the showroom, our showroom will be open soon. And when it is, we can show you what 5,000 can look good during daylight hours in a residential space. And I challenge you to come back or go to the Lutron Experience Center. So it can look good during daylight hours because it brings the daylight into the space. But when it's not daylight, in the middle of midday, it does not look good. So when you get into warm hours and it's not the middle of the day and you're trying to pull daylight, actual daylight into a space, it just does not look good. But when you're pulling daylight into the space, it's beautiful because you're extending the light into the house. So it's an extension of the daylight into the house, and it looks great. But when you're walking in and you're trying to have 5,000 Kelvin in your bedroom at 10 o'clock at night, it's brutal.
No.
Yeah.
Especially, but like you were saying, it's the transition. That's what you're talking about.
Correct.
It's not that you're putting these bulbs in. It's the function of it being able to
It's the function of it being able to transition.
Yeah.
Because it's what humans are used to. As a day progresses from a hazy morning to a bright noon to then sort of this sexy, moody twilight time where everything gets warmer. So if we're able to sort of follow a similar arc, which is why a warm dim is something that I really appreciate and a lot of our fixtures have, where if it's full bright, it's 3,000, which is like a soft white, so it's not daylight. And then as you dim it down, it gets warmer. And when it's just at 20% of its illumination, it's going to be like 1,800, which is like a flickering candle. And I mean, that's the sexy time. And then it's bedtime.
Good. Anyone else? No? Going once? Twice? All right. Well, thank you so much to this amazing panel. And if you have more questions that come up later, of course, Apparatus is represented at our Hughes, so you can ask questions there. And then Simply Wired Pro will be open very soon, as he said, I think in the next month or so, fingers crossed. And sourcing these days, you know how it is. Anyways, we're really excited about that. And then, of course, look for Betsy's projects. She can be found in many of the magazines that you see on those newsstands. So thank you all so much for being here for Digital Day. Again, these presentations were all recorded, and they will be available on our YouTube channel, and we'll send that out by email. And our team is here if you have any remaining questions you need to ask us. Thank you so much.